The Worship of the Golden Calf Radio Address by the Honorable James M. Curley, Mayor of Boston. Delivered November 27, 1933, released in pamphlet form the same year by the City of Boston Printing Department. History has an astonishing habit of repeating itself. Yet the most astounding feature in connection with this repetition is the failure of so-called leaders in banking and political circles to recognize this fact. The brutal assaults that have been made upon President Roosevelt and the persistent sniping of his National Recovery Act is part of the program to maintain a system of finance that has become obsolete, and through which 80% of the people have been impoverished for the enrichment of 20% of the people. Certain definite proposals for humane and economic relief have been proposed by President Roosevelt and are now in operation, against which no one has had the audacity to protest. Namely, the end of child slavery in industry and the end of the sweating of women in industry. The proposal for the price-fixing code through which industries might receive a fair return from consumers for materials purchased and sold rather than from profits from the chiseling of the workers, as has been the vogue during the past 4 years, and the limitation of the hours of labor to prevent overproduction with its penalty of unemployment for a period of each year, thereby placing upon the community burdens which should be borne by industry and pauperizing men who are able to work, but deprived of the opportunity through mass production and the speeding up process. There has been no open assault upon any of these fundamental and essential plans for permanent relief. The assault has been confined to an attack upon the financial features, which has been classed by some as socialistic and by others as rubber money and bologna. They would have you believe that under the gold standard we are living in utopia during the period of its operation, rather than in the United States of America. They apparently are extremely desirous that the public forget the 4 years of cumulative depression under Herbert Hoover. They would likewise have the public forget that not only was not one single additional man able to secure employment in the past 4 years of Hoover, but that unemployed men in America increased from 3 million in 1930 to 13 million upon the 4th of March of the present year when his term ended. They would like to have the public forget that no sane, courageous program outside of pauperizing relief was presented during this trying period, and that when the present President of the United States was inducted into office, every banking institution, with the exception of those which had been looted by the present defamers and critics of President Roosevelt, and which numbered in the period from 1920 to 1933 to 15,000, were closed. They endeavor to convey the impression that national disaster would result from the adoption of a change in the monetary system, and that the United States of America was the only nation that had given serious thought to a departure from the gold standard. The fact is that the only nation today upon the gold standard in the world is France, and there is an indication that France will be required to abandon the gold standard in a very short period of time, or suffer the ills that have been suffered by the people of America through failure to recognize the almost revolutionary changes that have taken place in the world. To remain stationary is to prolong a period of stagnation, and stagnation means death to the people of the United States. Great Britain, confronted with a dole system most destructive and character and with general unemployment, found it necessary to abandon the gold standard in 1931, and the only real prosperity that Great Britain has known in the past 12 years has been that which has been in evidence since the abandonment of the gold standard. Since the abandonment of the gold standard by Great Britain, the severity of the depression in America has increased, and this may truly said to be as a consequence of our failure to abandon the gold standard. In other words, just so long as America continues upon the gold standard, just so long will America continue a contributing factor to the prosperity of Great Britain at the expense of the people of the United States. There is nothing essentially new in the program as promulgated by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It was in operation from the 12th to the 14th century, or from the period dating 1150 to 1350. It was found necessary in order to protect the people in their employment and to prevent national disaster in the year 1150. The same outcry was raised against the Archbishop Wichman, who found the public treasury empty, and being fearful of increasing taxation at the time when the people could not pay any taxes through general depression and unemployment, ordered a change in the monetary system which was far more revolutionary than any that had been considered at the present time, and yet which was so successful that it was adopted and generally throughout Western Europe, resulting in a prosperity that continued for far more than 2 centuries. It was decreed that all outstanding coins should be withdrawn twice annually and be reminted at a minting fee of 30% per annum. And notwithstanding the protest, principally from the usurers, it proved to be so successful that in most countries in Europe it was speedily adopted. It was likewise provided that the reminting fee be fixed at from 20 to 25% annually, and as a consequence hoarding ceased, since anyone who hoarded coins or money lost out entirely at the end of the year, and every person with money was thus forced to put out his money at a constantly lowering rate of interest because money was suddenly plenty and easy to get. Every money owner endeavored to get rid of his money before minting time, exchanging it for wares or lending it to be used for capital production to escape payment of depreciation charges at the mint. The money thus passed from hand to hand at a great and increasing velocity of circulation, setting up an unparalleled demand for goods of all kinds. So great was the demand for goods that production facilities trebled in 15 years, and production and distribution went on to the limits of human abilities and intensities. And within one single generation after this innovation in the money system, poverty disappeared from all Western Europe, and with its passing culture and spiritual development became the order of the day. It was known in those days as the just price system. In Roosevelt's day we term it the New Deal. It is really the old deal in new garments. Working men enjoyed a decree of independence which prior to that time was undreamed of, the working week numbering but 4 days and a wage for skilled artisans averaging the equivalent of $40 today. Under the just price system, similar to what is proposed under the NRA system, cultural progress in every line was encouraged, and educational facilities were taxed almost to the breaking point to meet the demand of the people who no longer knew the meaning of poverty or pauperism. Most of the beautiful moments that are to be found in every section of Europe were constructed during this period, and unlike our own land under the gold standard, everyone shared in the prosperity rather than a bare 20% as here. The desire for quality production rather than quantity became the accepted rule which even today gladdens the heart and the eye of the lover of the artistic journeying through Western Europe, and being permitted to gaze upon the monuments to be found either in Salisbury, Cologne, or England. It was the era that marked the age of chivalry when children were afforded the opportunity for mental and physical development, until they arrived at an age which would permit their working without serious injury to mind or body. This is in striking contrast with the conditions in America under the gold standard where during the machine age more than 2 million children have been employed annually in hazardous occupations in mines, factory, mill, and cannery. It was the period where women by law were prevented from competing with men in employment and found their proper rank in society as mothers, who through education and social justice had opportunity to supervise their children, making of them worthy boys and girls, the fundamental essential of good citizenship and orderly government. This is in striking contrast with the custom which President Roosevelt is endeavoring to destroy in America, namely the sweating of women in mill, in shop, and in factory, and which, provided he succeeds as he must succeed, will not only provide additional opportunities for work for men, but result in the removal of the competition of women workers in industry, which must of necessity increase the wages of men. The adopting of the shorter working week and the shorter workday as advocated by President Roosevelt will hasten the coming of happier day in the life of American, one replete with opportunities for work for the people and at a sufficient wage to provide for more than the bare necessities, as at present. Apparently there are still men in America who pose as leaders of public thought who failed to recognize the all-important fact that this government was created for the benefit of the people of America, and not for the accumulation of money and the enrichment of a few at the expense of many. America has too long worshipped the golden calf. The time has come to change the monetary system and give humanity the opportunity for the fulfillment of the aspirations of free men, citizens of a free nation. It is clearly the duty of every individual interested in his own family and in his fellow men and in our common country to support wholeheartedly the great humanitarian, the champion of popular rights, whose thinking upon the question of social and economic justice has bred hope in the hearts of millions who have too long been walking in the shadow of adversity, and who have bred fear in the hearts of the money changers who have too long been permitted to fatten upon the wasted bodies of women and men and children sweated in industry under the gold standard. There is every indication that notwithstanding the muzzling of the sources of information that ultimately the people will rightly understand, and when they do the rubber dollar and the baloney phrase makers will be appraised at their true value, namely, enemies of social and economic justice, worshippers of the golden calf. Mayor James M. Curley,